everyone, Merry Christmas and welcome back to JP's Budget Collecting and our weekly look back at the hot comics from 6 months ago. This week we're looking back at the hot comics from June 25th, 2021, and I'm recording this on December 23rd, 2021. I want to thank you guys for a fantastic year of all the support you give me and the channel. But this one video, we're looking at the hot comics from the CBSI Hot Top 10 and the Comic Tom Key Collector Hottest Trending Comics of the Week. So this week we got 19 comics to look back at. So let's get into this list and see if we can learn anything. So first up, we got He-Man and the Masters of the Universe number 19. This is just kind of a hard to find final issue. Nothing really super key on it. Back then, raw copies were going for around $50. Now they're going literally for $5 to $50. And I really mean that. Like the last 5 sales were literally $4, $9, $50, $25, and $47. So this has been a little bit all over the place. Definitely an I'll be back is the way we'll kind of put this, because you have been able to get it for less than that $50 it was going for before. Definitely down, but definitely a book that's been a little all over the place. I know the He-Man comics in general have slowed down since the show came out. Not quite as much buzz. I think very mixed reviews on the new animated series that's been coming out. So next, we got Sandman number 8, first appearance of Death. This hit the list because we knew the show was coming, and we got news on casting of Death for the Sandman show. Back then, 9.8s were hitting all-time highs of $1,600 to $1,900. Now a 9.8 will cost you about $1,250, or at least the last sale. There's only really been one recent sale of a 9.8. Lots of 9.6s, 9.4s selling, but only one 9.8, and that was for $1,250. Raw copies will cost you anywhere from $100 to $200, depending on condition. So another book that's been down a little bit, so definitely an I'll be back on this one as well. Forgot to mention at the top this week that some of the books, you'll see my what I said 6 months ago on the on Cash or Trash. Some of them you will not, and that's because Tom was a little late getting his video out, and I couldn't wait any longer with my schedule, so I just did it looking at the 10 CBSI books. So next we got G.I. Joe number 282, the John Royal 1 in 10 variant. Raw copies of this Snake Eyes Storm Shadow cover were going for $40 to $60 back then. Now a raw copy will cost you $20 to $35. So this one turned into a little bit of a trap, going for about half of what it was back then. So part of the reason it went for so much is a lot of the stores didn't get all the copies they ordered, but eventually they did get them. So I think that's what brought this back down a little bit, but still somewhat hard to find. Next, we have Sonic the Hedgehog, the 30th anniversary special. This is the Tyson Hess 1 in 25. This thing was going for $60 to $100 out the gate, and I thought, there's no way that this could keep up. Who cares? But apparently there's a very strong Sonic audience, even though typically game-related comics don't do all that well. This one has continued to sell really well, at least for high values. $100 to $150, but that's only 3 sales in there for these, where it's going now. But there's not a lot of these listed. It is fairly hard to find, so there's definitely a audience for this Sonic book, even if it's a small one, that are keeping the prices pretty high on it. Next, we have Bitterroot number 14, the Juneteenth variant. So they were going to make this a variant even before all the stuff came down, where Juneteenth got turned into a federal holiday. Raw copies of this were going for $15 to $20 back then. Now it's going for $5 to $10, so cover to double. Definitely another book that turned back into an I'll be back. All right, with that, we got 3 more covers still to talk about. We got Silk number 4, the Jenny Frison 1 in 25. This one was going for $40 to $50 when it first came out, so about double ratio. Usual rule on that is that it's going to settle somewhere around ratio. You could kind of say this one's actually going for $10 to $50 right now, so it's still going close to that 40 to 50 from before, but also there's definitely sales down around $20 or under if you can find deals. So this one definitely turned into an I'll be back. 9.8 only running about 185 to 125. Cover I really like, but I'm a sucker for Jenny Frison and of course anything Spider-Man related, including Silk. So there you go. Next, we got Stray Dogs, number 5, the Friday the 13th homage variant. So Stray Dogs has done a ton of horror movie homage variants. This particular one was going for $15 to $20 at release. Now it's a $5 to $15 book. A 9.8 will cost you $60 to $100. I thought this one might be worth it at only $15 to $20. Not quite. It did turn into an I'll be back. Definitely dropped back a little bit. Next, we have Marvel Voices, Pride, number 1, the 1 in 100 rainbow variant. This one was going for $150 out the gate. I didn't really understand. This was one of Tom's books, so I didn't really have a prediction on this one. But this one has dropped way back, $30 to $40. Doesn't really surprise me. There's nothing really here. It's just the rainbow colors. Some of the other variants I could see holding value. With this one, this one didn't make a lot of sense, even though it was a 1 in 100. So this one definitely turned into a bit of a dumpster fire. Not a lot of interest still in this book. Definitely, at least not at the prices it was going back then. So that was our last cover. Next up, we got Comic Buzz, and we actually have a big Comic Buzz section this week. We actually got, 2, 4, 5 books. First up, we have New Avengers, number 10, the first appearance of Thane. Now, this was on the list last week, on the opposite list. So raw copies back then were going for $20 to $30. 9.8 was hitting $200. Now raw copy will cost you $10 to $25. 9.8s are $2 to $225, but not many of those sales. So vast majority of sales are those raw copies. So it does still fall as an I'll be back. Kind of like it did last week. Again, this was one of those where it was an opposite list. This hit the list because Cates was talking about that he wasn't done with Thane and he wasn't done with Thanos, and there was an image. And this book, Thor number 6, our next book, the second print, this image that was inside the book that became the wraparound cover with either Thanos or Thane holding Mjolnir with the Infinity Stones attached to it, plus a gauntlet of some sort, was Cates talking about is what made both of these books hit the list. Back then, this one was going for $4 for raw copies, a 9.8 for $67. Not sure it was really that hot, but it was one of those they put on the list anyway. Now it's a $5 to $15 book, with the most recent 9.8 going for $60. So I guess steady and worth it is what you would call this. Still basically going in that same price range. Still a little buzz. We'll see if Cates ever does anything with a lot of it. I feel like a lot of talk from him, not always a lot of follow through. We'll see. Next, we have Stray Dogs, number 1. This is a hot indie series of the moment back then. Obviously, we already had the cover for number 5, which was the final issue of the run. Raw copies back then of number 1 of the A cover were going for 100 plus. A 9.8 hit 400. And I thought, this one might keep going. I thought it might fall into that something is killing the children category. It did not. Now raw copies are 50 to 90. Still a really high value for a book that came out just this year. Don't get me wrong. 9.8s are 120 to 200, which have backed up considerably, but not a ton of those sales. Most of the sales are still raw copies, but definitely a down. Definitely an I'll be back on this one. It has definitely slowed, even with the follow-up series in the same universe coming out. I think, did it come out this week? Maybe. I think it might have come out this week or not. Sometime soon. I know for sure. Next, we have Amazing Spider-Man number 263, the first appearance of Normie Osborn. So why was Normie hitting the list again? That was because basically Cates had him hanging out with Dylan. And we know that from the whole Red Goblin thing, there's a part of Carnage that's still in him. So that's part of why everybody's thinking he's going to play a role in this, as Dylan takes over as Venom. So that was what was going on here, why people were specking on this. Raw copies of this jumped up to $15. A 9.8 hit 150, but it was mostly just a major increase in sales. That price was pretty much what it had been going for. Raw copies are still 5 to 25, 9.8 still 125 to 150. So this is another steady, I'll be back. You basically in the same price range, you can definitely get deals if you're patient with it. Next, our last comic buzz of the week, and it is Venom First Host. First appearance of Sleeper. Again, this is related to Dylan and everything else, but this raw copies of this were going for $15 back then. A 9.8 hit 130. Now raw copies are running at 10 to 30, but I would call this up because the vast majority are in that 25-ish range, so it's up a little bit from the $15 average back then. 9.8s are basically 80 to 125, so fairly similar. So I put this as up worth it because most of the sales are raw copies, and they are, the average sale has definitely went up from what it was back then. All right, with that, we're going to move into a little DC TV and movie stuff. We got a couple books here for that. First, we have Injustice: Gods Among Us, Year 3, number 7. and this is the first appearance of Laura Lane Kent. And if you remember a couple weeks ago, we talked about the first appearance of Circe, I think, which was another version of Supergirl. This is basically, again, people specking on which version of Supergirl is going to be in the Flash movie because she has black hair. So people were maybe specking that this is the version we were going to get. Raw copies of this book jumped up to $35 to $40. Raw copies now are going for $20 to $30. So definitely another I'll be back kind of book. Still don't know that we know which version of Supergirl is going to be in that Flash movie, or if that Flash movie, we'll see what actually comes of it. Still afraid it may end up being a bit of a mess. We'll see. Next, we have Superman number 4. This is the first appearance of Bloodsport, and this hit the list because the trailer for Suicide Squad dropped back then. So hard to believe that 6 months ago we were still getting trailers for Suicide Squad. Seems like that movie came out a long time ago, but this was still pre-movie. Bloodsport was definitely the focus of that trailer quite a bit, and turned out to be a pretty big focus in the movie. Back then, raw copies were going for $20. A 9.8 hit $200. Now it's a $5 to $20 book. 9.8 hit $100 to $150. So definitely an I'll be back. This is not unusual for non-major characters with a lot of history. When they put them in these movies, we get a bump, but they usually don't sustain it. They sustain a new level compared to what they were before, but not the level of when the movie or trailer is dropping. Next, we got a couple of Star Wars books. First up, we have Darth Vader number 22. First appearance of Lord Momin and Lady Shaw, who is, I guess, technically the first female Sith Lord. This kind of has a flashback to these two characters. And back then, raw copies were going for $15. A 9.8 was hit $75. And now a raw copy will run you to $15 to $30. And this one's actually up a little bit on the raw side, which is obviously the vast majority of sales, a little bit worth it. And this has all hit the list because of rumors that these two characters might be part of the Acolyte series. But they're supposed to be two of the very first Sith Lords. And the Acolyte series is supposed to be actually after, like toward the end of the High Republic era. So the timing seems a little off for me. I don't think they're actually going to be a part of it, but we'll see. Next, we have Star Wars Darth Vader number 6. First appearance of the Order of Inquisitors and the Grand Inquisitor, as well as you see all the others, like a shot of them, even though you don't get much more of get cameos, I guess, from all the other Inquisitors. This was on the other list last week. Raw copies of this were going for $30 to $60, and 9.8 was hitting $200 back then. Now it's $25 to $60, $250 to $300. Interestingly enough, I actually put this as down last week when I talked about it on the opposite list, but Tom had a lower value than the value we talked about last week. Last week we were saying $50 to $60 on the CBSI list. Tom talked about it being an average around $30, with high sales a little higher than that. So that's why I put it as steady and worth it now. Again, most of the sales are still raw copies, even though the 9.8s have bumped a little bit. Just an interesting difference between the weeks and the prices that the two lists give. Most of the time they're fairly close, but a lot of time Tom's averages tend to be a little lower than some of the prices listed on CBSI. Just an interesting quirk sometimes you see between the two lists. So yeah, this one's definitely been pretty steady, somewhat worth it. I think people are expecting that we'll get more of the Inquisitors. They are kind of cool characters as Jedi hunters and servants of Darth Vader. We'll see. I would guess we might get an appearance of him in the Obi-Wan show. Maybe, maybe not. We'll see. Next, we get Doctor Strange, number 48. First meeting of Doctor Strange and Brother Voodoo. And basically, people were specking on this because it's kind of a cheap Brother Voodoo key, I guess. Raw copies of this were going for 5 to 15. Now they're 10 to 30, so this one's actually another up and worth it. I know people are specking that maybe we'll get to see these two meet in Multiverse of Madness. I don't think it's ever been confirmed that Brother Voodoo is in it, but we'll see. They've definitely been dropping a lot of new characters in there. And finally, last book of the week is Marvel Spotlight, number 32, first appearance of Spider-Woman, Jessica Drew. So this was hitting all-time highs, and this had everything had to do with, the chance of a movie coming. This was the Olivia Wilde rumors that she was making a Spider movie. Not really rumors. She kind of said she was making a Spider-related movie. Still don't know which character that's actually going to be focused on, but a lot of people were thinking Jessica Drew. 9.6 hit an all-time high of 1450 back then. Now this book has cooled a little bit. 9.6s are running you $850 to $1,000. Raw copies are running you $75, $300. Still going pretty strong, but definitely turned into a bit of an I'll be back. Haven't gotten any new news on what that movie's going to be. No official word that we're getting Jessica Drew in any form yet. I still think there's a chance we get her as fallout from the Secret Wars stuff, that we're getting Emilia Clarke. She just seems like too perfect casting for this, but we'll see. So that is this week's list. I want to wish you all a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. I am taking next week off, but I want to thank you guys for all the support you give me this year and hope you have a happy holidays. Later.